Well, thank you very much, Elaine. And thank you and thank our TV audience for joining us on this very special occasion, the 200th anniversary of the birthday of Charles Darwin and Abraham Lincoln. Seriously, allow me to provide a little bit of context for tonight's event. The Lincoln-Douglas debates took place in 1858 in Illinois. They were not presidential debates. They were debates over who was going to win the Senate seat. Douglas was the incumbent U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois. Now, Lincoln was the underdog, and so he challenged, as a good underdog would, he challenged Douglas to debate him, and Douglas accepted. There were 7 debates in all. Each took place in a different location around Illinois, and each was 3 hours in length. Now, that's 21 hours of debate in all, and by my calculation, we'll be finished by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. FEMA will be sending in the water. Now, the format of the Lincoln-Douglas debates was consistent throughout. The first speaker would get up and go for 60 minutes. Imagine that on CNN today. Then the other debater would get up for 90 minutes, and then the first speaker would get up and finish out at 30 minutes. Now, these debates provided frontier entertainment. They were wild affairs. It would be sort of like getting Al Franken and Ann Coulter together today. But of course, they were so much more than entertainment, because in these debates, Lincoln and Douglas plumbed some of the most serious themes in American history: the nature of our republic, the interpretation of our Constitution, that peculiar institution, slavery, and especially the problem of the expansion of slavery into the West. Also, the new profession of stenography was just getting established at this time on the frontier. And stenographers would take down their notes, and then they would translate them and use a new technology, the telegraph, to get the debate verbatim to the newspapers around the nation. And that's one of the reasons that these debates became so famous so quickly, not just in the United States, but around the world. You could almost say that the Lincoln-Douglas debates join other state papers in U.S. history. For example, I would compare them to the Federalist, Anti-Federalist papers from 70 years earlier. Well, for all these reasons, the legacy of the Lincoln-Douglas debates is enormous. And perhaps the most important legacy of all is that it propelled a young frontier Illinois lawyer onto the national stage.
Popular sovereignty is what we talk about here, sir. Mr. Whitney, 2 talented Illinois lawyers are coming on the stage.
Please. Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Stephen Douglas and former Congressman Abraham Lincoln.
At age 21, I was Illinois Secretary of State. At age 27, I was a justice in the Illinois Supreme Court. At age 30, I was a congressman. At age 37, I was a U.S. Senator. And at age 41, I was the head of the Democratic National Party. And I'm still playing second fiddle to him.
Well, I tell you that I was a lawyer. I was a member of the party called the Whigs, the party of Daniel Webster, the party of Henry Clay. Now, we had the feeling that by 1820 we had kept the lid on slavery, locating it below what we called the Missouri Compromise line. When Tom Jefferson purchased the Louisiana Purchase from France in 1803, 6 years before I was born, they established an area of territories within that, and in 1820, a territory called Missouri applied for statehood. But they wanted to become a slave state. And the Congress said, all right. So we're letting slavery legally expand across the Mississippi River, but they carefully drew a line 36 degrees and 30 minutes north latitude, going from that west bank of the Mississippi out to the area that he purchased, the end of that area. Someday they'll probably say, well, now that's halfway through Colorado. But below that line, slavery was legal, and above it, it was not. And this man, Mr. Douglas, seemed to endorse that plan very well. I felt content with it. Now, Mr. Douglas, in 1854, reveals another side of his thinking with the Kansas-Nebraska bill, which we'll talk about. But I would say my new Republican Party, founded right here in Jackson, Michigan, 1854, would approach this man in 1858 and say, Mr. Lincoln, our candidate, needs to be seen by the same crowd as your people are, so he needs a platform with Mr. Douglas for some debates around the state.
So at first, Mr. Lincoln followed me around the state and dogged me everywhere. And it seemed that Mr. Lincoln wanted to debate me, and I said yes. But he wanted to debate over 100 times. I said no, 7 times. We'd already spoken in Springfield and Chicago, and we went to the 7 congressional districts. The first district, Ottawa, and I lambasted him. He did not know what hit him.
Well, I reckon that was a little unpreparedness on my part. I remember that I did try to say one thing which would outline the debates. I spoke and I said it has long been a grave question in this country about Mr. Douglas and myself's view on slavery. The leading man, I think I may do Chief Judge Douglas the honor of calling him Sitch, advocating the present democratic policy, never himself says slavery is wrong. He has the high distinction, so far as I know, of never having said that slavery is either right or wrong. Almost everybody says one thing or the other. I confess myself as belonging to that class in the country which contemplates slavery as a moral, social, and political evil, having due regard for its actual existence amongst us, and of the problem of getting rid of it in any satisfactory way, and of all the constitutional obligations which have been thrown about it. But nevertheless, desire a policy that looks to the prevention of it as a wrong, and looks hopefully to the time when, as a wrong, it may come to an end. That's what the debates were all about. Here we had slavery hopefully contained. We could work on its extinction. And Mr. Douglas comes along and talks about several ways to get slavery expanded.
Well, after Ottawa, we came to Freeport. At this time, I am one of the top political people in the country, and I am on a high. But however, Freeport changed that.
Well, Freeport, I responded to 7 questions that he had given to me over in Ottawa. You see, this man tried to paint me in the abolitionist mode. He tried to make me a radical. I was not. When the program was developed here in Jackson, Michigan in 1854, it was a combination of my Whig leaders, the abolitionist leaders, the Free Soilers, and the American Party. They all hated slavery, and they all belonged to 4 small parties. They said, let us come together, and we may have a new energy and the numbers to go to the polls this fall and say absolutely no further extension of slavery. They never said do away with it. No, they couldn't. It was protected by our Constitution. But you could stand against it, you see. So in that group were the abolitionists. And he tried to paint me as the man who, like John Brown out in Bleeding, Kansas, would react totally different than anything that I would have ever condoned.